Hello, Steamies. Turns out I'm not quite done talking about the model era of Thomas and Friends just yet. The model era, and in particular the classic era, is what I grew up with, so obviously I'll have a lot to say about them. But recently I've just finished the hit era, and I've realised I need to do some rankings that incorporate the whole model era of Thomas and Friends. In particular, ranking seasons 1 to 12 from worst to best. Like that little break that I said I was taking in December, yeah, I spent it rewatching seasons 1 to 12 of Thomas and Friends and putting them into a ranking order. And a quick note, Jack and the Sodor Construction Company will be included in this ranking. So there will be 13 places rather than 12. Now, don't just assume that because I have ranked the classic era and the hit era, that those rankings will automatically transfer into this big list. I did have a couple of surprises in here. My mind has been swayed, as it always tends to do with my crazy brain. So there'll be some in the middle that you might not expect to be where they are. Once again, these are all my own personal opinions. Your list will be different from mine. And it's the one thing that makes the Thomas fandom so unique. And let me know in the comments how you would rank seasons 1 to 12 of the model era Thomas and Friends. All I ask is that you be respectful and above all, enjoy the video. Now we've got that out of the way, let's dive in. Number 13, season 12. You know how I said there would be some rankings that would change? Yeah, not this. This was absolute garbage. Rewatching it, I could actually feel my eyes bleeding. Still not a fan of it. Still think the stories are just watered down rubbish, but I still am quite fond of the model CGI hybrid that they were going for. I think if they had a couple more seasons to test it out, I think it could have been really, really good. But we got what we got. It's okay for what it was, but that's all that saves it. Number 12, season 8. It ranks so low because of the sheer jarring nature of going from season 7 to season 8. So much of it changes that it just makes the viewing experience a little bit uncomfortable for me. A question has been posed to me about whether or not the classic era and the hit era are separate timelines, and I am going to get round to getting a video done about my theory on that because it was a very interesting question. But in terms of the episodes, you know there's a shift, the quality has gone down, the saving grace is that it's still the models. Number 11, season 6. You might be surprised at why this is so low down on the list. It's a classic era season. When you watch the seasons back to back like I did, the marked downgrade from season 5 to season 6 makes it all the more jarring for me. I don't count series 6 and 7 as a separate era or a separate timeline because it still had the original production team that were doing the majority of the work. But the downgrade between 5 and 6, probably because of what happened with Magic Railroad, is why it is so low down on the list. And no, I'm not including the movies in the list either, because I'm saving them for a separate list I'll work on later on down the line. Number 10, season 10. Some interesting characters are introduced. You've got the return of Sir Handel, and for me, the stories didn't completely suck. There are hits and misses with the hit era, but I found this a rather pleasant experience, at least more pleasant than the ones that I have previously ranked. It felt like they'd finally accepted what their style was and they were going with it. Number 9, season 3. Okay, here come the keyboard warriors. Season 3 has some great episodes in it. I do not deny that. Some classic railway series adaptations that are done superbly. Escape, Mavis, Toby's Tightrope are just some of the examples. It was the original stories that, to me, let it down a bit. I know the reasons behind why they were adapted. I know some of the behind the scenes stuff around it, where allegedly the stories were adapted from magazine issues without consent. But again, I say allegedly because we don't know the full story. What we do know is that we've got what we've got with this season. And again, because of the jarring nature going between season 2 and season 3, and some of the stories being of lesser quality, that's why it's not higher up. Sorry. Number 8, season 9. On retrospect, I was maybe a bit too harsh with season 9. I think watching all the seasons back to back actually helped this improve in the rankings. You saw the changes that they were trying to make. The addition of new characters such as Mighty Mac, Molly, Dennis, the return of the narrow gauge engines. Questionable personality choices aside, you can tell there was an improvement. They were trying their best with what they had, and overall it wasn't too bad. This list just proves that over time people's opinions can change. Just because you say them in one video doesn't mean it's not going to change in another. We're all human, our opinions are allowed to change. It is not set in stone. Number 7, Season 11. This one is set in stone though, because I believe Season 11 is the best season of the hit era. A lot of people don't agree, and that is fine, but for me, I still really enjoyed it. I didn't mind the aesthetic changes. I didn't mind the little tweaks that they were making to stories as they were going on. It was showing growth and improvement and adapting to times. Are some of the stories just your generic 3-strike formulas? Of course they are. But there are gems like Hector the Horrid, which you all know is a favourite of mine, that make the season more well-rounded and true to what it was trying to be before they switched it up in Season 12 and it bombed from a great height. Number 6, Jack and the Sodor Construction Company. If we had more episodes to go by, this could have been higher up in the list. It wasn't given a fair shake because of corporate meddling. But overall, this is a charming series on characters completely separate from the steam engines, aside from Thomas and Percy. And if it had more time, I'm sure it could have been a really strong franchise of its own right. The episodes themselves, aside from 1 or 2, are strong, and I'm really grateful that we at least got those episodes. Number 5, Season 7. Again, a lot of people downgrade Season 7, but I personally enjoy it. I see marked improvements over Season 6. We get more engines introduced to the world of Sodor, some of which become long-term mainstays. There are characters that you wish you saw more of going into the later CGI seasons that you never did. The stories themselves are okay. It's the narrow gauge engine ones that for me dragged the season down, because we knew what was coming when it went into the hit era. But for this to be the official end of the classic era in my head, I'm okay with that. Number 4, Season 5. Yes, Season 5 is not number 1. That opinion for me will not change. However, the more I rewatch it, the more I appreciate it. I still don't like the episodes like Sir Topham Hatt's Holiday or Lady Hatt's Birthday Party, because I just don't care about the human characters. I have mentioned this in previous videos if you want more analogy as to why. But the episodes we got with the engines are fantastic. Not all of them are hits, but overall, I appreciate Season 5 much more for what it tried to do, rather than it being stuck in my own little bubble in my head of what I thought the classic series should have been. This is part of the human experience, my friends. We learn, we grow, we mature. And I now appreciate the more mature themes that Season 5 was trying to convey. Will it be my favourite season of the classic era, or even the model era? Well, no. But it doesn't mean that I can't appreciate everything that it brought to the table. Number 3, Season 1. If you watch my classic era list, you will be surprised that this has dropped to number 3, whereas it was number 2 in the classic era list. Why the drop? It's the rewatchability factor. I love Season 1. I always have, I always will, but I still feel a little bit uncomfortable when I watch it. I am maybe going to do a video on that, because I need to break it down in my own head as to why I actually felt quite frightened watching Season 1. I don't know why, but I did. I felt an unease in my stomach, and I didn't like that. Are all the classic episodes absolute bangers? Of course they're not. But does it establish the world of Sodor? Does it establish the characters we're introduced to? Can you watch it as an insular season and not watch anything else? Can you appreciate the direction, the lighting, the cinematography, the writing? Of course you can. It's what this franchise has built its legacy upon. But like with any first season, it's not impervious to flaws or criticism. And I'm sure many people know that. Number 2, Season 4. You're probably going to be really surprised as to why this has shot up the rankings as much as it has. Season 4 reminds me of why I fell in love with Thomas in the first place. It makes me feel comfortable, safe, loved, and secure. The introduction of the narrow gauge engines I have grown very, very fond of over time. I didn't like it when I was a kid because it took away from characters I had already known. But when you re-watch the entire model era and you see how badly the characters of the narrow gauge engines get downgraded as the era goes on, you really, really appreciate everything they brought to the table in season 4. The original models, yes, they were a pain in the for everybody that was working with them, but they're charming, they're elegant, they're stylish, sophisticated. Everything about them just screams classic to me. These are what the original narrow gauge engines mean to me. Everything about them is shown in season 4. I was actually a little bit more disappointed going back to the standard gauge episodes in this season, which is how I never felt as a kid. But you appreciate the style and the dedication that it took to making not just the engines, but the beautiful sets of the Scarborough Railway, the hillside tracks, the mountains. It's just model making porn. I still love a lot of the standard gauge episodes in this season. Even the Christopher Audrey ones, which I was a bit harsh on when I reviewed them the first time. I still don't think they were translated as well to screen as they are in the books. But with the key marketing figure of Bulstrode being introduced, that has lasted right into the dreaded reboot, you can't deny that he was onto something. A great season, some beautiful set design, the music was fantastic, just beautiful, but not as good as number 1, season 2. It's my nostalgia bait season. It will never change. This is the season I literally grew up on. From 0 until 5 years old. Season 2 was essentially my Thomas and Friends Bible. I knew it inside out, back to front, cover to cover. I knew everything about it. I could recite the storylines word for word when I could speak. They were the videos that I would want to watch religiously. And it's not faded over time. It never will. I love the aesthetic change from seasons 1 to 2. It going to be more industrial and workmanlike and working class. I'm from a working class background, so it makes me feel that security. Percy, of course, gets a lot of time in the spotlight this season, and me being a Percy fan, that's understandable as to why I would like it. These episodes were why I loved Percy. I got to know him. I got to relate to him. I empathised with him. I was the cheeky little git that got into trouble, and most of the time, I would get messed about and seen as simple. And the new characters that got introduced during that season, which became mainstays and personal favourites of mine, like Duck, Donald and Douglas, Diesel, Boko. Bill and Ben could be little pricks, but I appreciate what they are and how well they contributed to the season. Harold the Helicopter, Trevor the Traction Engine, even the Christopher Audrey adaptations, which I was harsh on as a kid, and even in my reviews, I appreciate them so much more. It's also got some of my favourite incidental music. The waterfall themes, the viaduct themes, obviously Duck's theme. Just everything about it screamed perfection. I think there's a reason why David Mitton and Robert Cardona left to do Tugs after this. They raised their game with this season and realised we can do more. And yes, the aesthetic choices changed from season 2 to 3, but if it wasn't for the standard that they set themselves in season 2, I do not think there would have been a Tugs. Or there would have been an improvement into season 3. You can trace it back to this season of Thomas and Friends. The entire world of the franchise expanded from this season. And that's why, in my opinion, it is ranked as number 1 in the model era of Thomas and Friends. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, keep on jugging.